Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, and today we're doing another commentary with Clyve production, this time focusing on the Mortal Kombat movie. If you're new to this channel, my commentary with Clyve series is chock full of commentary on a number of things Mortal Kombat related. So please visit my playlist and check those videos out. But today we're going to be focusing on the movie. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please take a moment to like and subscribe to my channel. Make sure you share this video as well as check me out on my other social media accounts. The links will be in the description below. So let's get started with this review. So the first thing that I liked about the movie is I think something that everyone liked, and that was Scorpion and Sub-Zero action sequences. I mean, every time these two were fighting on screen, it was really a 12 out of 10. I mean, unfortunately, we only saw them fight twice, once in the beginning and once in the end. It's a really shame we only got to see Scorpion 2 times, but the 2 times we did see them, it was an amazing action sequence. Speaking of Scorpion, I think the intro sequence has a really good job at establishing the complicated history that Scorpion and Sub-Zero have. It's very true to Mortal Kombat's legacy. And when I reference Mortal Kombat's legacy, I'm specifically talking about the video games. So in the video games, Sub-Zero and Scorpion have real big beef for a very long time. They actually just started clearing it up in the recent iterations of Mortal Kombat in the current timeline, but the fact that the movie immediately went there is very true to the game's history. So the intro sequence was really nice, particularly with Scorpion's action sequences. I loved it. Speaking of Sub-Zero, I mean, the way he used his powers in the movie were just amazing. The way he formed his weapons in the beginning, where he did that creepy thing with the icicle coming out of his hand in like a threatening way, I thought that was cool. The scene at the burger shop was amazing. It's just how it lightly started snowing and then boom, it turned into a hailstorm, and that one guy got knocked out. I replayed that part so many times. I thought it was funny. But yeah, the way he used his powers in this movie was just amazing. The second thing that I liked might be controversial. I actually liked Cole. Initially, when it was announced that a new character was going to be the focal point of the movie, I was completely against it. But Cole really grew on me, particularly when he finally manifested his Arcana, which we will get to later. I think the character has potential. I like the idea of him being a descendant of Scorpion and how their powers are sort of like similar in terms of using fire. Also, the video games have never really explored or introduced anyone that was akin of Scorpion. So this is the first time we're seeing a descendant of the Shirai Ryu. So I thought that was a nice touch. Cole is not perfect, but I think there's potential there and definitely room for improvement, which I will discuss later. Another thing I liked about the movie, Easter eggs. I mean, this movie was full of Easter eggs, and as a longtime Mortal Kombat fan, I had such a good time pointing them out. The Makota people, obviously a nod to Nightwolf. Kotal Khan was even shown, which I was really surprised about because Kotal Khan was just introduced in 2015. So for him to even get a credit in the movie, I thought was cool. Kitana's fan, Shinnok's amulet. Liu Kang even referred to Bo' Rai Cho, which I thought was great. And the fatality sequences themselves were Easter eggs, right? The head clap by Jax, the dragging from Liu Kang, even Sonya killing Kano with the garden gnome. To me, it read as a stage fatality because I just thought it was so silly and it was something that would happen totally in a Mortal Kombat game. Even when the characters won, their catchphrases were straight out of the game. Kano saying, Kano wins. Kung Lao stating flawless victory, obviously a nod to not being touched by Nintara and him killing her. There was also multiple fatality references, and even Shang Tsung saying your soul is mine. These are all huge Easter eggs, and as a longtime Mortal Kombat fan, I love that the movie at least had some of those references in there. The lines coming from Jax and Kano. While I don't like Kano as a character, I do understand why he was so likable on screen. on screen, and I do understand what he added to the movie. I don't particularly like the manifestation of Kano in this movie, but the pop culture references were on point. Him referencing MC Hammer, he called Raiden Gandalf, and my favorite part is when he was in the pit with Liu Kang, and before the fight started, he tells Liu Kang, "No Harry Potter shit." I thought that was funny. He also called Liu Kang a whoosh, not Liu Kang, it was Kung Lao. He called Kung Lao a whooshy wanker. I thought that was great. Again, I don't like Kano, but I respect the fact that he added a lot of relief to an otherwise problematic movie. And even Jax has some great lines too. Him telling Reiko, "Damn, your breath stinks." That's something Jax would totally say. Him also looking at his hands and saying, "Yep, these motherfuckers work." It's totally something Jax would say. So at least those were accurate representations of something the character would say in the video game, at least a hint of their personalities. So I thought that was great. Also, the character relationships and the dynamics between certain characters in the movie were 100% accurate, particularly Liu Kang and Kung Lao. That Shaolin monks pose when they were in the hallway, as someone who played Shaolin monks, I felt it and I loved it. And you really felt the camaraderie between the two of them, and you really knew and could see that Liu Kang really loved Kung Lao and was particularly devastated by his death. Even him using the cloth from Kung Lao's hat to create his headband, that was a really nice touch. I really, really liked that. Obviously, as I mentioned before, the Scorpion and Sub-Zero dynamic, immediately establishing that they are just enemies, was nice. Again, the movie does a poor job at explaining why, but at least they had that accurate. Sonya and Jax, the two have historically rescued each other throughout the different timelines of Mortal Kombat. In the current timeline of Mortal Kombat, their kids are actually best friends and are working together, and even refer to each other's parents as uncle and auntie. So the two characters are particularly close. Though I didn't like Jax's Arcana, which we will address. I think the fact that it was triggered by him wanting to help Sonya, wanting to rescue her, is very on brand. I think that was something he would want to do in the video game as well. So again, they nailed another dynamic there, another relationship dynamic there. The ending, obviously, alluding to Johnny Cage. You know, everyone wants to see Johnny Cage, particularly because he's a movie star in Mortal Kombat's history. So to see him in an actual movie, that's going to be fun, or it should be fun. Hopefully it's going to be fun. And you know, some of the fights I really enjoyed. Like I said, the intro sequence was my favorite. I think the last sequence with Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Cole was pretty nice. I loved Sonya versus Kano, the final fight between them. I think it's one of the few fights that felt impactful. I mean, they were knocking each other over, throwing each other through walls, using things in the environment. I mean, that's what a knockdown fight should be like. So I really enjoyed that fight. And again, the way it ended with her stabbing him with the garden gnome, I just knew that garden gnome was going to come back and play a role in the movie. As soon as Kano spit on it, the fact that they highlighted it so much, like they gave it so much camera time to show the spit going all over it, I was like, something's going to happen with that gnome. And would you know, he died by the gnome. So I thought that was great. And honorable mention, Cole versus Goro. I enjoyed that fight. Now for the bad. First thing that really, really upset me about this movie is the concept of Arcana. This concept cheapened the idea of who the Mortal Kombat characters are. Some are magical beings, some are gods, and then some are just highly skilled combatants. Some are also creatures. This idea that they're all somehow limited to a marking, or in the case of Cole, a birthmark, followed by them having to awaken their inner power, just seems like an excuse to give the fighters a reason to exist on screen. It's like the producers and the directors discovered Mortal Kombat, didn't understand why we have a reptile fighting a military girl, and decided, well, let's create something that'll give them a reason to fight. And I did not like that. I don't think it was really successful in certain areas. For example, for Sonya, the idea that she needed to unlock her arcana, and when she finally got one, it was a freaking ring blade. When the video games have largely solved for that, yes, it's kind of ridiculous for a human to shoot ring blades out of their arm, but the video games have solved for that. They have outfitted Sonya with a device on her arm that shoots a projectile. So she didn't need an arcana to be effective and exist in this Mortal Kombat universe. I don't understand why that concept was invented, and it wasn't successful for Sonya. It did not make sense. If the producers played Mortal Kombat 1, 2, or 3 and they thought it was ridiculous that this human girl had ring blades, again, the current timeline of Mortal Kombat has already solved for that. So the Arcana concept is useless. It doesn't make any sense. And in fact, particularly with Sonya, the current timeline, she is a tech person. You know, she runs the special forces. She has access to her ring blade. She has access to drones. She has access to grenades. She can even control helicopters. Okay, so this idea that her inner power is a freaking ring blade, it just doesn't make sense. It just does not make sense. And I cannot believe they did that. And then with Jax, oh my God, if Sonya upset me, Jax's scene really just sent me up a wall. It really pissed me off. At first, I didn't understand why the Shaolin monks in the temple would be implanting the technology onto Jax's arms. But upon watching the film again, I did hear Liu Kang say he traveled throughout every realm to find a cure to help Jax now that he has lost his arm. So, you know, I was sold on that. It was a little weird for these monks to be putting metal things in this body, but fine. But the idea that it started off as chicken arms and then it grew because of his arcana. Let me repeat that. His arcana is his metal arms growing. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. And I get it. I know that it already sounds ridiculous that some military guy would implant himself with metal arms. I totally understand it. If you're not familiar with the Mortal Kombat franchise and the legacy, you're completely entitled to questioning why this man has metal arms. But to tie the growing of the metal arms to his arcana, it doesn't make sense. It's ridiculous. We're already messing with fantasy characters. Why make it unnecessarily like fantasy-ish? It really upset me. And then on top of that, did no one play MKX and see how ridiculous a skeletal arm looks? Did you not remember how Shinnok looked? I mean, clearly they did not play MKX, because you would have known that putting a skinny skeletal arm on someone just looks stupid. And it looked even worse on Jax's big buff guy. I mean, it was just dumb. It was just dumb. And then the idea that they tried to make Cole unlock his arcana by getting beat up. Why? Just why would you do that? The arcana concept, stupid. Let's talk about the women. If you know this channel, you know I play with a lot of female characters. So I really paid attention to how the Mortal Kombat females were treated in this movie. And there were only 3, and unfortunately they failed all 3 of them. Let's start with Natara. For those of you that don't know, Natara is one of like 3 unique women that were created and introduced during the 3D era of Mortal Kombat. In fact, she debuted in November of 2002. Currently, she's a highly requested character for DLC for Mortal Kombat 11. You know, so she looked decent, but unfortunately she was just a ploy for a fatality. And the relationship between her and Shang Tsung just felt creepy. I mean, Shang Tsung was giving me creepy old man vibes. Creepy thin man, yeah. Total creepy thin man vibes. The way he spoke, he's just like, my beautiful, you know, Natara. And they sort of They built her up this way for her to be this just like vixen of a character, and then they just sliced her in half. What a waste of a character, you know, particularly because she has a following, she's highly requested, and they threw her on the screen just to kill her. I mean, a waste of time. And by the way, they did the same thing with Reiko, you know, introducing Mortal Kombat 4. People would love to see him return, brought him back just for him to be killed. Made no sense. Mileena. I mean, Mileena just seemed void of personality. How can you suck all of the personality out of Mileena, out of all the characters, you know? In the games, she's either really playful and sadistic or she's extremely savage. And, you know, she usually has a little oomph to her. Well, this Mileena was just a zombie. She was just a zombie. She sounded weird. I mean, I liked how they did, they finally utilized her teleportation at the end. But she sounded weird. She was just a zombie, and we didn't get to see her do anything with her mouth. You know, if they thought that her licking the sai was enough, I'm sorry, it was a failure. Licking her sai is not enough for Mileena to be cool. That is just a taunt. It is just a taunt. We want to see her in action, and unfortunately, she was just kind of there. But the biggest sin against a female character, again, Sonya Blade. And my question for the producers and the director is, do you know who Sonya Blade is? Sonya's father was brought up in the Marine Corps. So Sonya was brought up in a military household. She joined the Marine Corps herself. She was at the helm of the Outworld Investigation Agency in previous timelines. In the current timeline, she is a general. She is general running the entire special forces. She has taken on sorcerers. She has taken on revenants. So when Liu Kang and Kung Lao come out, they whole ass and tell her that she's a liability because she doesn't have the mark and she hasn't unlocked her arcana. I mean, the Sonya that I know would have punched him right in his mouth for saying that. I was really offended, and I was offended for her. And the fact that she just turned away and just took it. I mean, that is not Sonya Blade. That is not Sonya Blade. It's just not her. And that happens in a lot of scenes. She's just kind of casted to the side. She plays, you know, she's a good support system for Jax, inspiring him to get off his ass and get back to training, to get back to who he was. She tells Cole that he's lucky to have a family. I mean, this is not Sonya Blade. Sonya is a hard ass, okay? She's tough. She doesn't take any crap from anyone. And I just don't like how she was just, they just cut her off at her legs in this movie. And I do not think this was an accurate portrayal of Sonya as she would be in the video games, you know. And then she came off as more of like a treasure hunter. When she opens her base, she has all the pictures on the wall, and you know, she's been investigating, following, and this and that. That's total crap. Okay, Sonya's not a treasure hunter. When she was walking through the pit hallway, she was mesmerized by all of the Mortal Kombat artifacts. Sonya does not care. She's on a mission. Who is she there to rescue? Whose ass does she has to be? And then she keeps it moving. So just the way they handled Sonya was just a real travesty. I mean, do you know who Sonya is? Sonya is the first female of Mortal Kombat. Let's treat her like she's significant to the franchise, because she is. Whew. The other thing that I didn't like about the movie, and this part of the conversation is basically an overall thing that pops up throughout the movie, and it's that production is in need of a serious facelift. It needs more oomph. It needs to be turned up a notch. The entire production felt muted, with the exception of whenever we had special effects were used. There were certain backdrops that were just there for no reason, particularly when Mileena is seen overlooking a valley. What is this? Where is she? Where is Shang Tsung walking to? Why is she with Shang Tsung? Where are they going? Are they just walking through a valley? Are the people just playing in the sand? What is going on? Make this make sense. And I don't give them a pass. I don't care if they introduced it and they just said Outworld. Outworld has more personality than just being gray and muted. It's dark. It might be deadly. There might be monsters everywhere. Maybe there's someone's skull rolling down the hill or something. But it's more than just what it looked like on that screen. It just was so muted. Even the scene where Shang Tsung introduces all of his warriors, okay, they were in Outworld on some random bridge, but there was no personality to the scenery at all. Again, if you play the video game, you would know that every single stage, every backdrop in a Mortal Kombat game has personality. It has oomph. There's design there. There is things going on in the background. It's dynamic. And unfortunately, all of the backdrops here they were just muted. They felt dull. There was no life to them. I didn't like that. Some of the fights were either hit or miss as well. And there was a clear effort put into some fights, like the beginning and the end. And other fights were just, they were just time fillers, right? The Jax and Reiko fight felt pointless. It just seemed like an opportunity for Jax to do a fatality and show his arms. I guess he had to redeem himself after having his arms taken and everyone like kind of clowning him and him getting shoved around by Reiko earlier. Okay, fine. And then poor Reiko has so much potential development, and here he's just treated like a piece of meat. He has no words. There's this movie trope where like the big guy is just like, he's an idiot, he's just a meathead. That was Reiko in this movie. We're in 2021. Good Lord. Natara and Kung Lao is kind of the same thing. Natara is just this object of beauty where Shang Tsung is weirdly affectionate to her. And what does she do? She just gets chopped in half. What is the point, right? And to be honest, a lot of the actors look uncomfortable with the fight choreography, and this is just unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. In a world where action movies that are just like amazing and cinematic, in a world where these action movies exist, in a world where we have John Wick, where the Matrix was a thing decades ago, right? And the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is just unacceptable for the fighters and the actors to look like this and look like they're so uncomfortable throwing punches. Come on. The hand-to-hand in certain areas was just weird. And then again, why is Sonya fighting with pocket knives? Sonya has never been a pocket knife type of girl. She's the type of girl that will get in your face and beat you with her fists and particularly her legs, right? She did that in some points in the movie, but they really focused on her using a lot of knives, which is uncharacteristic of General Sonya Blade in the game. So this was just unacceptable. Raiden felt like less of a thunder god and more like just a man with a staff who had an attitude problem. There was no stature to him at all. I didn't find him intimidating. Again, the special effects look cool with the lightning and his eyes lighting up, but there was just nothing else to him other than him playing Thunder Uber and transferring everyone from place to place. And he was just really a jerk in this movie. And in the video games, Raiden might be harsh, but he had a message. He was trying to bring the best out of you. And this Raiden was just an asshole, okay? And I didn't like that. It's one thing if you want to be mean and tough, at least be intimidating. Liu Kang worshipped the ground he walked on, but I didn't find him intimidating at all. Cole's Arcana, I just feel like it looked like a rubber suit. It was not flattering at all. I liked how it looked, again, enhanced by special effects. It looked cool with the glowing, but when it wasn't glowing, it just looked like a rubber plated suit. At some points in the movie, you could see that it was actually bunching up, and it was so obvious that it just was ill-fitted, and it was just poorly constructed. Poorly constructed. And if you were going to give this man a suit of a suit of armor, being powered up because he is the descendant of the legend that is Hanzo Hasashi, also known as Scorpion. I mean, you gotta come better than that. You know what I mean? It was really unflattering. And then, to add insult to injury, his weapons that just randomly sprouted from his arms, why is one a blade and one is like a tonfa, as opposed to them being like extensions of him? Like, I'm not, let me correct that. I'm not opposed to him having weapons that are extension of him and his ability to fight. But you got to do better than that. A blade and a tonfa? Why is he sprouting? Why does a tonfa come out of his suit? He's not a superhero. It's not like that suit was created to sprout weapons. This is an inner power, which is again why the concept of Arcana is just stupid. And I highlighted Cole, but I think the costumes overall throughout the movie are just a complete letdown. I mean, look at Kano. I get it. A lot of people loved Kano. He was a comedic relief. He added a lot of energy to a lot of scenes, and I'll give you that. I totally agree with you. But the look of Kano is a total letdown. You could put Kano next to any version of the last 3 Kanos we got from the last 3 Mortal Kombat games, and they look nothing alike. I mean, this Kano just looks like a hiker. He just looks like a hiker that got dirty and has a toy knife in his pocket, because that knife looked like plastic. I have a knife that looks just like it that I bring out on Halloween, and it's just he looked crazy. There's no way that's Kano. And again, the Arcana is problematic because Kano typically has a cybernetic eye. That's his thing. But they made his eye power like an Arcana. It's just, again, the Arcana thing is just so stupid, and it shows up on Kano, and it's just ridiculous. And he looks ridiculous. And then look at Sonya. Sonya is just girl in tank top the entire movie. And what's really upsetting about that is that she has progressed so far from that. You know what I mean? She's more of a military person now. She has a uniform. She looks like she's ready for tactical battle now, which I think is a nice direction that they went in with her. In MK9, she had cleavage, which was really ridiculous, but they quickly addressed that, which I really appreciate. But in this movie, she's just girl in a tank top the entire movie. It's just ridiculous. Jax also, he spends the entire movie in a pair of jeans that I have in my closet. I mean, come on. Even Shang Tsung looks a little weird. The moments where he was walking, I think his costume looked cool. But when he was static, it just was man with a breastplate. It just was. And then the top knot, I mean, just the costumes overall, if they weren't muted, they just were let down. They didn't look cool. They didn't add anything to the characters. I just didn't like. And then speaking of muted, the color palette of the costumes themselves, right? There are a couple of times where if you did not know, if you didn't see Sub-Zero using his ice weapons, you would not know that was Sub-Zero, because the colors were so muted. I guess they thought because it's a bloody game that the color palette should just be dull, but I would fastly correct that. Backgrounds in Mortal Kombat, again, very vibrant, very dynamic. The costumes, I mean, the NetherRealm has built up this franchise to where the characters have never looked this good. This is the best these characters have ever looked. So to throw these versions of the characters on a movie screen, disrespectful. The entire production needs a facelift. So I've talked about the good, I've talked about the bad. Question is, how do we fix it? And like I just reiterated, it starts with production. My problem with production, outside of it just needing a facelift, is just the way things were done. You would not know that Mortal Kombat has a rich history over the last 20 years. You would not know from watching this movie that Mortal Kombat is a very popular game with a rich history that extends across generations of platforms, right? Including movies, consoles, and even comic books. And that is a problem. A franchise with that much history should not have turned out this way on the movie screen. Again, in a world where the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing incredible things, in a world where John Wick and The Matrix exist, Mortal Kombat should not have turned out this way. Particularly in 2021, this is just unacceptable. So the first way to fix it is production. The second way to fix it is story. I feel that the director and the producers of this movie seriously need to play the video game, or at least watch the videos on YouTube. If you don't want to play Mortal Kombat, that's fine. The entire movie timeline, particularly from the last 3 games, you can go to YouTube and you can watch them. The foundation is there, and there are a ton of material to work with. All you have to do is make it make sense. For example, in the movie, it is explained that Jax and Kano both killed someone to get their marks. Who are these people that they killed? Were they Mortal Kombat characters? That should be explained, and it was not explored at all. Liu Kang also took the marking from somebody who was a purveyor of children. Who was it? And like I said, even if the developers didn't want to play through all of the Mortal Kombat games, including the old timeline, if they just played the last 3, that's MK9 that came out in 2011, MKX that came out in 2015, and MK11 that just came out in 2019, they would be in a much better place. The foundation is there. All you have to do is use it. And as a result of them not using it, the characters feel underdeveloped. For example, Sonya tells Kano he wasn't worthy of a mark because he killed someone to get it. Yet she doesn't have a mark herself. So is that projection? Does she have some sort of inner turmoil with her? I feel that maybe something could have been developed here. In the MKX storyline, Sonya actually has issues, particularly with her divorce from Johnny Cage and the family dynamic between her, Johnny Cage, and Cassie Cage. And that's a vulnerable issue. It is on screen for display. So in this moment, was she projecting something onto Kano, right? That's not even explored because screw it, we don't even care about this relationship. So she's just going to punch him around and call him a criminal. I mean, there was something there. It wasn't explained. There was potential there, and they just left it alone. And like I said earlier, the fact that she was reduced down to some sort of treasure hunter who is there to support all the other men around her as opposed to kicking ass and taking names, just ridiculous, right? Melina, her having no personality at all, her not being savage, not being sadistic, and just being a zombie, unacceptable. And I mean, look at Raiden. Look at Raiden. Raiden is supposed to be an inspirational figure, right? He is supposed to be intimidating, but if you're on the good side, you know, you want to fight for him. You like him. You look up to him. And instead, he was just Uber Raiden. He was just transporting people in this movie, and he was kind of an asshole. So, I mean, again, story. Now, in talking about the story, some have suggested that part of the issue with the story is the actors, particularly Cole Young, who was played by Louis Tan, and Sonya Blade, who was played by Jessica McNamee. People are saying that they're just bad actors and actresses. I don't really agree. I think the characters were written to not really give us much. So I don't think it's a matter of finding someone else to play the same character. I mean, that maybe that's true for Sonya, but again, I think the characters were just poorly written. But if it does come to a decision where in order to get a better movie, we have to replace Cole and we have to replace Sonya, I'm with it. Replace them. I do agree that Cole is not needed to tell the Mortal Kombat story. I mean, again, this is a franchise that has existed on video games, in movies, and in comics for the last 20 years. There are a ton of characters that could have been used to tell the story of Mortal Kombat. There are a ton of characters who only appeared one time throughout the entire history of Mortal Kombat. Those characters could have been utilized as opposed to creating Cole. So I do agree he isn't needed to tell the Mortal Kombat story, but I do welcome his presence. I just think they need to just do better. And finally, one of the good things that came out of this movie is that all the villains died, right? And what that does is that it opens the door for a whole bunch of villains to possibly come to our movie screens. I mean, what about Kitana? She starts off as a villain but ends up joining the Earthrealm Warriors. What would she look like on the movie screen? You know, if we get Kitana, does that mean we're going to get Sindel and Shao Kahn? That's another relationship dynamic that could be nice played out on screen. What about Ermac, right? The mystical being, you know, with the special effects, I think he would look particularly cool and entertaining on screen. The death of Sub-Zero. Everyone knows that the death of the first Sub-Zero, because there are two of them, the death of the first Sub-Zero directly leads to Noob Saibot. So, with Sub-Zero dying, will we see Noob Saibot, right? Johnny Cage is clearly coming. Again, these characters, including the Makota, what if Nightwolf showed up? All of these characters showing up on our screen would do some good for the movie. So I like that the villains died. I like that Kung Lao died. I mean, I don't really care for Kung Lao, but you know, if his death brings on fresher characters to the movie screen, I'm all for it. So, in closing, Mortal Kombat the movie was bad all around. I would give it about a 6.5. Even though it has some good moments, majority of it was just bad. However, thanks to the rich history that was built by NetherRealm Studios, the current producers of the Mortal Kombat video games, the movie is redeemable. And we are likely to get a second film off of sheer popularity. Again, watching this movie, you would not know how insanely popular Mortal Kombat is. But evidenced by the reaction that the movie got, it's popular. It trended all weekend. Whenever NetherRealm releases anything Mortal Kombat related, they trend on Twitter. The popularity is there. So more than likely, we are going to get a second film. So with that said, what did you guys think of the movie? Do you think it's redeemable? What did you like? What didn't you like? Please share in the comments down below. I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you. As always, don't forget to like this video and share, and make sure you're subscribed to this channel. There's a ton more of Commentary with Clyve Productions coming your way. Again, thank you guys for having this conversation with me. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys soon.